The Plants vs. Zombies franchise is a timeless classic. For over a decade, plants, zombies, they've been locked in a never-ending battle for suburbia, traveling through time and turning suburbs into war zones. This franchise has been through it all. Tower defense games, third-person shooter games, that one Facebook game, and even a card game. I decided it was time to take a deep look and find out what truly makes the Plants vs. Zombies franchise a timeless classic. Enjoy. Welcome to Plants vs. Zombies, or PVZ-1, the godfather of the series. This game released all the way back in 2009, and it was pretty solid for the game's time period. I mean, look at some of the games that came out during this time. It was pretty solid. As for the game itself, it starts you off pretty slow, introducing you to your neighbor, Crazy Dave, who gives you a pea shooter and a sunflower. And eventually, you do get more and more firepower, getting things like potato mines, cherry bombs, and much, much more. You even get a chance to engage in some bowling of the walnut variety. And finally, you get a chance to meet Dr. Edgar Zomboss for the very first time. Well, he sends you a very nice letter, as you can see here. This and a lot more is all in the first world, which is the front yard. And there are 5 different worlds in total. You have the day, you have night, you have pool at night, and of course, the roof. All of these stages are unique and pose different threats. For example, after you complete the night area, you might want to bring puff shrooms with you to the pool stage because they're OP at 0 cost. But when you plant them on the pool stage, pain. While this game does try to nudge you in the right direction, you don't have to listen. So you can keep planting those puff shrooms for the rest of the world, trying to figure out why it won't wake up. The game rewards you for doing these challenges. For example, the 0 sun at night challenge or the don't pee in the pool challenge. Towards the end of the roof stages, Crazy Dave gets kidnapped by Dr. Edgar Zomboss, and you must fight his giant robot on the roof. Huh. You know, I have a pretty strong roof, I gotta say. Once you're done fighting one of the best boss fights to ever grace gaming, you get a trophy, and the sunflower sings you a song, as you can see here. But don't worry, once you finish this game, there's a lot to do afterwards, like go through the campaign again. But this time, Crazy Dave forces you to use 3 random plants, and there are a ton of mini-games, like gambling and feeding zombie fish things. But while the topic of music is still fresh in your head, I'd like to shift from gameplay to music. PVZ-1 has some of the most iconic music in the series. I believe it is the gold standard for music in the Plants vs. Zombies franchise. The majority of the songs in this game are remembered for a good reason. While I can praise the likes of Loon Boon and Rigor Mortis, there's just too many songs to praise here. They are pretty much all inside of my head at any given moment, but here are 3 of my favorites. I seriously think that music plays a big role in making a game timeless. I'm sure you could think of a few iconic songs that you can hear a single beat from and immediately know what it is and where it's from. That's pretty much all I got for music, so let's talk graphics and design really quickly. This Plants vs. Zombies game has the most iconic art style in my opinion. Each plant and each zombie have some kind of beauty to them. They are perfect, carefully constructed and concocted, just seriously. Even down to the little imps, there's no doubt in my mind each character was thoughtfully crafted. You can just look at Dave and just know that dude is crazy. For 2009, these graphics are very nice, and everything feels so smooth and clean, especially on things like the console remix, and even the pixel art style on the DS version of all things, which you should definitely check out. And that leaves me with just one last thing, which is the story. And honestly, the story for Plants vs. Zombies is actually pretty simple. Zombies want to eat your brains, but Crazy Dave and yourself obviously don't want that. So you use plants to defend against the zombies. It's up to you and your totally crazy neighbor to save the day. Yeah, sure, the evil zombie super genius is after you with the giant robot. But it's all good because you all have a dance party together, and honestly, it gets crazier from here story-wise. And with that being said, I think it's safe to say PVZ did a really good job. I believe if this game wasn't as good as it was, then I don't think there would be nearly as many Plants vs. Zombies games as there are. I feel like half of those games wouldn't even exist if PVZ-1 wasn't as good. But I don't think there'd be a card game. I don't think there'd be the shooters. Seriously, this game set up the franchise for success. And how did they follow this success up exactly? Well, let's find out. Following the success of Plants vs. Zombies 1, PVZ 2 was only a matter of time. It dropped in July of 2013, almost 10 years ago. Gameplay-wise, it is pretty similar to PVZ 1, retaining many features, but also inflating the sun market slightly, with sunflowers and sundrops now being 50. Another big change was requiring seed packets to make plants stronger, as well as unlock them in some cases. Granted, a good chunk of the plants are obtainable via the worlds, which we'll get to in a minute. Before we get into the story and the extra gameplay, I felt like it was worth mentioning microtransactions because yes, they are a part of this game. Both PopCap and EA were okay with them being in the game. I will admit these microtransactions really do suck, okay? It would be one thing if it was like $1 or $2 a plant, but $5 a plant? Seriously. It's just kinda stupid, especially when you look at plants like Snow Pea and Chomper being paid plants, which really doesn't make any sense, considering they were in the first game for free. Though I really like them, and I was tempted to buy Chomper when it was $1, don't get me wrong. But yeah, I just wanted to point out really quickly that yes, microtransactions exist in this game, but they are not a deal breaker, and honestly, I can live with a couple microtransactions in my Plants vs. Zombies games. It was only a matter of time before I mentioned the story. And this time, it all starts because Crazy Dave wanted to go back in time and eat his very delicious taco. And I mean, I don't blame him. It looked pretty good. But instead of going back a few moments like he planned, we go all the way back to ancient Egypt. But we have some new plants like Bok Choy and Bloomerang, while meeting up with familiar faces in Cabbage Pole and even Twin Sunflower. We even meet some new zombies, like these two guys. The gimmicks in this world are actually not that bad. You just have to deal with gravestones and the occasional sandstorm, which are minor inconveniences that pester you in this world. But get used to it. Each world has its own gimmick, some more annoying than others, and of course, Edgar Zomboss makes his return, sporting this weird Zombot pyramid thing. It's pretty cool. But as you escape Egypt, you are then dropped off at Pirate Seas, and you get access to a coconut cannon and a few other newcomers, as well as Colonel Polt and Cherry Bomb. So you're pretty much set. Granted, you see new zombies like the Seagull Zombie, who flies over water and is super annoying, as well as the Barrel Roller Zombie. When it explodes, it spawns imps. Finally, you get to face Zomboss again, who sports whatever the hell this is. Next up is the Wild West, and while there isn't a crazy gimmick here, you do have to deal with the damn chickens. Besides that, it is pretty chill, especially with the piano zombie here. The world clearly emphasizes the gimmicks of zombies rather than the overworld itself. For example, the miner zombies and the rodeo imp. They're basically preparing you for the bullshit that is to come. Let's be real, if there were a couple of minor inconveniences in the overworld, it would get really annoying really quickly, which some worlds do a lot more than others. Zombot comes back, but I think you've picked up on the trend here, haven't you? Man, I'm starting to sweat in this thing. Which is funny because we are in Frostbite Caves, which introduces a new mechanic with temperature, believe it or not. If it gets too cold, your plants turn into ice cubes. Thankfully, with plants like the new Pepper Pulse and the Gemium Fire Pea, it's pretty easy. But you combine this gimmick with the gimmicks of new zombies like the Cave Zombie and the Dodo Bird. I just wish they stayed extinct. Also, the Zomboss fight is pretty cool and I enjoyed it. It's just so annoying when your plants get snowed on. I'm going insane. Lost City is mid, okay? Instead of Lost City, it should be called Mid City. I made a whole video about it, but it's basically Indiana Jones, but good. but yeah, it's pretty cool. At least we got some cool plants, I suppose, right? But for real though, it is pretty cool. The gimmicks are fine. I mean, the little trapdoors, I wish we got to see them more. And the sun tiles are pretty sweet. It's just an easy world. I like to call it the filler world because not too much exciting stuff happens here. Just a couple of gimmicks here and there, but that's really about it. The Zomboss fight is pretty cool though, I gotta say. Far Future is one of the coolest worlds ever. We overshot our landing and have to face zombie robots, which raises plenty of questions about the ethics of continuing to use zombies if Zomboss has the technology to create robots capable of backyard domination. I mean, even the Gargs are robots now, which is pretty cool, but really makes you think, doesn't it? At least most of the zombies have jetpacks now, and it's pretty cool, I gotta say. Honestly, the Zombot fight here is average, but that's because you're exposed to so much robot stuff. You would expect him to have something cooler, if I'm being honest. You are the average, big wave beach lover. I am the average Dark Ages enjoyer. Despite the return of the Greystone gimmick, this world is just great! With new gimmicks like the Wizard Zombie and the King Zombie, which are both BS in their own beautiful way, it is the perfect amalgamation of bullshit while remaining fair and in the player's control. I mean, come on, we get Sunbeam. Friggin' Sunbeam! Instant classic of a plant. Also, this world sported the first Zomboss battle for PVZ2, and honestly, this world deserved it. Truly one of the best worlds out of this game, and I just love the Dark Ages. Neon Mixtape Tour is one of the hardest worlds in my opinion. This one cranks up the gimmicks to 10, which was fitting for the time period, I gotta say. Zombies can go faster depending on the music. A roller skater is basically a zombie walnut, and a gamer that spawns 8-bit zombies with so many insta-killers and pushers. I'm sorry, but that beat is not worth the trauma I had to endure to get it. This was not worth all of that. Not at all. The Zomboss battle is one of the most unique, with him singing and trying to seduce you via a song, and while he succeeded in one way, he failed in another. Jurassic Marsh is one of the most gimmicky, unforgiving worlds. I know I just said something similar for Neon, but wow. Now you have dinosaurs that fling zombies, pick them up, carry them, fling them in multiple lanes, and make them sprint like maniacs. And the only way to counter the dinosaurs has a long ass cooldown, so good luck. However, you do get the primal versions of these plants, such as Primal Potato Mine and Primal Sunflower, which are adorable. The zombies themselves are pretty tame, with just an upgraded version of the Bucket Head and Fossil Head and the Caveman Zombies relative. Zomboss uses the Dino Mechasaur, and it's such a badass fight, I gotta be real. A good fight for an even better world. Honestly, one of my favorites as well. Big Wave Beach. It is the second hardest world. Wow. The amount of gimmicks at play. You have the wave system, where if a plant is not planted on top of a lily pad and the water comes to get it, it will just die. Straight up, it'll just die. And if the water is high tide and you have a fisherman zombie, it can pull it into the water and kill it. Alright, so you have pull instead of push now. You have Octopus Zombie, which turns plants into octopi, which is basically just a more annoying wizard. And the Surfer Zombies, which cover tiles with their surfboard if killed on land. And, well, the plants you get aren't that solid either. Guacadala is great, but the rest are just decent, okay? I don't want your dollar store walnut bowling guy, okay? I mean, at least we get the Buckethead Bikini Zombie, I guess? Finally, Zomboss shows up in a shark, and that's honestly so damn cool. And looking back, this world really isn't that difficult, but it is still definitely one of the harder worlds in this game. And finally, we return to where it all started. Modern day! Moments before the taco was eaten, we get to experience hell. Every gimmicky zombie returns through wormholes, which spawn random zombies from anywhere in the middle of the map, and it's so annoying. But thankfully, we get shadow plants, which are able to power each other up, and it's pretty fun to strategize with. Old faces make their grand return, such as the newspaper zombie, who sprints now, and the All-Star, who is an insta-kill tank hybrid, who sprints at you. Zomboss though? Get ready for this one, it's great. 3 different fights, back to back to back. This timeless fight is one for the ages, I gotta say. This is a really good fight, which rewards you with a taco with the waffle in it? I would definitely try it at least once, I'm not even gonna lie to you guys. This time, sadly, no big music dance party, but the credits theme is pretty fire, I gotta say. And speaking of fire, I gotta say, each world has its own distinct theme and tune, and honestly, there are some bangers there as well. While there aren't as many good and memorable tracks as there are in PVZ 1, the ones that do stand out among the rest are so good. Everything down to the victory jingle is very unique for each world, and each world has some of the best music. Some of my favorites are pretty much all of the demonstration minigames. Ultimate Battle makes its appearance every now and again, and the victory themes, like I said, mwah. Here are a couple of examples from all of these that I could find. And I guess we should address one last elephant in this room, the art style. While it is vastly different from PVZ 1, it has had 10 years to grow on me, and honestly, I like it. I have no complaints about any of the designs. They all have a very nice charm to them, and I don't really dislike any of the designs of the plants or zombies. In fact, PVZ 2 gave us some iconic PNGs of some beloved characters, so I'm fine with it. And that's all the time I got for PVZ 2. I gotta get back to playing Plants vs. Zombies on my Nintendo 3DS. Wait a minute. I already talked about PVZ 1. Time flies, I guess. Okay, where to next? What a beautiful day in suburbia. Welcome to Plants vs. Zombies, what's it called? Oh, yeah, Garden Warfare. Plants vs. Zombies Garden Warfare came out 9 years ago, which is insane to think about. It's a third-person shooter with all of the PVZ charm. And where do I even begin? Well, how about the gameplay? Garden Warfare had 8 characters in total, with 4 on each side, not counting the respective boss modes. This isn't even counting the variants, which easily brings up the total to about 100 characters. The variants spice up gameplay, and all of your favorite characters get special abilities, such as fire, electricity, and ice, and so much more. And that's not all. Some classes have different variants that change the way their weapons function. Let's talk about the classes. Pea Shooter. He is a mobile offensive character who shoots peas that deal splash damage, while also sporting things like a chili bean bomb, which is a grenade that's really good for creating space. The Gatling Pea, which turns him into a mounted turret, and Hyper, which boosts his speed and increases his jump height to crazy heights. Now, the Pea Shooter is really good, but that also makes him very annoying to deal with. He has many ways of countering you close or long range, and he's really hard to shoot when he's jumping in the air, so he's a really formidable foe. You're easily dropping 50 if you use this guy correctly. I'm looking at you, Agent P. Sunflower is the healer of the plant side, but make no mistake, she isn't like Mercy or the medic. She has a strong full auto sun attack which deals solid damage. She has the ability to heal any plant with the heal beam, the ability to drop down a heal flower which constantly drops heals for her plants, and the sunbeam, which just like the Pea Shooter turns her into a mounted turret, but this time with the laser beam. She is very strong despite having 100 health points, and while she won't net you 50 kills like the zombies healer, the scientist, she will net you most revives and heals with ease. Cactus is the sniper of the game, opting to defend, set up camp, and pick zombies off from afar. To do so, she has things like Garlic Drone, which is the small low health drone that can summon corn strikes and shoot prickles for quick damage. She also has the Potato Mines, which are really annoying when placed in the right spots, and the Tall Nut Battlements, which act as barricades to protect against oncoming damage. Cactus screams a lot when she dies, by the way, but she's still a really good pick. Chomper's the last plant I'd like to talk about because I have some beef with him. He is one of the goofiest, most gimmicky, most chaotic characters in Garden Warfare. He specializes in swallowing zombies and can do so pretty easily, with abilities like Goop, which stuns and slows zombies, Burrow, which basically makes him invincible as he goes towards you at rapid speeds, and Spikeweeds, where you get snared and held up in the air. There are a lot of ways to counter him, and you still can get killed. He's weak to pretty much everything in each zombie's kit. ZPG, Imp Punt, Sticky Bombs, the Engineer's radio thingy. But for as many weaknesses as this guy has, he's still somewhat good. Even though he can't one-shot zombies with shields or armor, he just is so annoying. It's crazy to think about it, because He does have a lot of counters. He shouldn't be this annoying, but he is. I think it's because a lot of the plants in this game and a lot of the zombies earn their kills. Chompers rarely earn kills, I would argue, because most of their gimmicks are pretty gimmicky. Their abilities are gimmicky, the way he functions as a character is gimmicky, but it works. I'm gonna be 100% honest. Do I hate Chomper? No, I actually really love him. In fact, I think Garden Warfare is the only game where a character like Chomper would work, and I love him for that. Not only does he add a well-needed element of bullshittery, but he is also not a pain in the ass if you know how to counter him. Like I said, he's counterable with every class, but you're still open to getting gooped and frantically turning around trying to save your ass before it's too late. First up, we got the Foot Soldier, the definition of offense. This guy has a lot of ways to get you. His Z1 Assault Blaster is able to take you down from any range, and he can get the high ground with his Rocket Leap. He also has a ZPG, which is basically a free kill if you spot a pea shooter or sunflower in their turrets. And he also has a Smoke Bomb, which is great for countering everything except Chomper, because he doesn't care what you think about smoke bombs. Now, Foot Soldiers are some of the best offensive units in the game. I recommend you confront him ASAP to deal maximum damage and kill him quickly. He is too dangerous at mid to long range, and he has no trouble picking plants off. Once you do track and fire at him, it's usually game over if you can keep hitting him. So Scientist is the healer, if you can call him that. Unlike the Sunflower, it's actually encouraged to ignore your teammates and rush headfirst into battle. Sure, you have the healing station, but you usually use it on yourself as much as you do teammate. You're given sticky bombs over a heal beam, which is pretty crazy, I gotta say. And they're great for taking out potted plants and sunflowers, as well as just finishing off low HP opponents. He also has the warp ability, which warps him forward a good deal. Just like the Chomper, he is somewhat weak from mid to long range, dealing crazy damage up close, but don't get it twisted. There are plenty of ways he can pick you off from any range depending on what type you fight. Just don't expect any heals or revives from him if you're playing with him. All-Star. This is one of the coolest classes and it's so underrated. He has a unique overheat mechanic with a cool minigun. The All-Star also has access to Imp Hunt, which is free kills if anything's really in front of you. You also have access to Sprint Tackle, which allows you to rush through plants and get to the cactus who thought they were safe in drone mode. And Dummy Shields, which are just like those tall nut battlements, but better I'd argue. Which is weird because I never really see All-Stars using them that much anyways. The All-Star is thought of to rely on his abilities, which is true, but nah. He's also pretty good even without them, because his minigun is pretty much an upgraded Z1 blaster with fall off. But he deals a good damage from afar, but up to 10 plus at close range, making him a great choice for any range. He was one of the main reasons I loved Plants vs. Zombies, by the way, and to see him in this game just warms my heart. Now I know what you're thinking, guys. Camo, why do you never choose Engineer? It makes sense since you yourself are an engineer, and I mean, he does have generous splash damage. All that thickness comes at a price. Engineer is no doubt a fun class, with the drone just like the cactus, the jackhammer, and even a direct counter to chompers and pea shooters. So why do I not use him as much? Have you ever tried to build a teleporter on gardens and graveyards? You will spend half the match stuck in a vicious cycle, constantly fending off pea shooters and chompers, with your teleporter being destroyed in less than a minute. Now tell me, is that worth the thickness? Yeah, probably. Now that we have characters, every good shooting game needs good modes. And boy do we have good modes. We got Team Vanquish, Vanquish Confirmed, Capture the Taco, Suburbanation, which is basically domination, Gnome Bomb, which was search and destroy with as many lives as you needed, Garden Ops, which was a PvE mode for plants to put their skills to the test, and finally, Gardens and Graveyards, the unique mode that brought Garden Warfare notoriety. Plants must defend their garden, while zombies must take over the garden. If the plants stop the zombies from capturing the garden, the game ends. But if the zombies take over, the plants continue to fall back until the zombies reach the final point, which turns into a special event, whether it be destroying a giant sunflower, stopping a tactical cube, or just pushing a golf ball. To me, this just encapsulates the Garden Warfare experience perfectly. All characters are perfectly viable for the game mode and actually give you a reason to try new things out. Overall, this is my favorite mode. The gameplay from this game is nearly unmatched. You know, I'm gonna be honest, EA actually did a really good job with the way they handled the sticker pack system. And basically the sticker pack system acts like a loot box system where there are multiple packs to pick from, and they give you a set number of items, with some just giving you consumables and some just giving you a character straight up. This might seem like a bad idea at first, considering that you have to pay to get characters, but it's all randomized, which is for better or for worse. Not to mention, as you can see in the footage here, you don't really need a variant to be good at this game. You could just use a base character and still put up a good fight. But what about the rest of the game? What about the music, the design, and the story? The music for Garden Warfare is a really good mix of new, unique music, blended with updated and upgraded PVZ 1 and 2 music. It takes notes from both of the respective games, and everything from the loading screen music to Loon Boon Skirmish, and even the title theme do a great job of giving off the feeling for the game. This is a love letter to the original Plants vs. Zombies. And of course, the atmospheric music from things like the gravestones and gardens are also a nice touch. Now, what about the designs? The transition from 2D to 3D was gonna be a big one, and they honestly nailed it. The zombies and plants retain that charm that they're known for, while also looking like, well, plants and zombies. Obviously, some plants and zombies had reworks and changes, but they were mostly just there for extra detail. For example, look at a lot of the vines and roots around pea shooter. It makes sense. The environments also feel like they took the game's backgrounds and threw them into a 3D making machine, and just wow. It's just such a great game all around. It is the reason I'm named Camozombie after all. And what's funny enough is that the story isn't all that crazy. It really is just a battle between plants and zombies for suburbia. Plants are defending their home, and the zombies want brains. Who succeeds? Well, the next game gives us the answer. Back in my middle school days, I vividly remember telling my friends that I emailed PopCap and told them to add zombie gardens and graveyards and garden ops for zombies. Though I never sent any letters or any kind of communication to PopCap. It turns out they got my message. Garden Warfare 2 picked up right where Garden Warfare 1 left off, and it boasted a huge roster, now containing 121 characters and tons of new maps and locations. We returned right to where it all began, Suburbia, now turned into Zomburbia, which I'll get into a little bit later. But for now, let's talk about the new gameplay characters. Corn! He's kinda like the foot soldier for the plants, but a lot slower and a lot tankier. He's able to throw in a butter barrage, which is basically like the garlic drone's airstrike, but a little bit more fun. He also has a ZPG in his shuck shot. He has this really neat ability where he leaps into the air and just drops all of his corn on top of you, which is really cheesy and it works really well. Rose is basically like the engineer of the plants, but it's really weird. Allow me to explain. While she can build teleports, her teleports don't really get targeted nearly as much as engineers' teleports do, though they still get targeted. Besides her ability to make teleports, she also has the time snare ability, which creates an AoE that slows all zombies caught inside of it. She has the ability called Arcane Enigma, where she turns into an invincible little spirit thing, and she can't take damage for a certain amount of time. Though she can damage you, but with short little bursts. The more bursts she uses, the less time she has in that invincibility. And finally, Goatify. You basically just shoot and turn a zombie into a goat. And it works, but be careful because the goat can still kill you. So Citron is a very unique plant. He really doesn't have any zombie counterpart per se, because all he does is turn into an orange and roll around the map. He is the definition of a baller. Inside of his ball ability, he has the ability to go even faster, which is basically like his take on Pea Shooter's Hyper, because he's able to go fast and jump high. So it's a pretty good way to get around, especially in Herbal Assault, which we'll get to in a second. He also has a charged attack while in the ball. He basically stops for a couple seconds, then charges forward, dealing a good amount of damage to any zombie in front of him. Outside of his ball, which is rare, he has a shield, which is pretty good at soaking up damage. He also has the EMP, which is basically like a 1v1 free kind of deal, where if you spam it, you're probably gonna beat whoever you're fighting. Think the engineer's megaphone, but a little bit longer and a lot more annoying. And finally, Torchwood. Think about the all-star on the zombie side. Now, turn him into a plant. This is kind of what you get. His normal attack is actually really mid, But when you use his ability, he turns into a blue Torchwood and he just starts shooting faster, his bullets do more damage, and they gain the fire effect, which is really good, especially when you want to take over points. Now, his other two abilities are actually really good, but they're only good if he gets close to you. The first one of them being his flamethrower ability, which basically is a free win if anybody gets too close to you. If all else fails, you have the leaf shield, which basically just halves all the damage you receive from everything, and I'm talking everything. You basically get an extra 200 HP if you use this ability. Overall, he's really annoying, so be careful if you see him out there. Before we get into the new zombies, I'd like to quickly point out two changes that were made. The scientist gained an ability in the heal beam of science. That makes him more of a healer, but still, why would you use that if you have access to just a regular healing station? That just makes no sense. And they removed the engineer's drone ability for the bolt blaster, which is basically the equivalent to Gatling P or Sunbeam, where he mounts himself on an actual turret and shoots nuts and bolts at you. It's actually really cool, and it's a good ability. Now let's get on to the newcomers. First up, we have Deadbeard, who has a hybrid weapon. He starts off with a shotgun at close range, dealing massive damage. When you aim, you actually turn it into a sniper, so it's like a really cool hybrid character. He has some pretty solid abilities. He basically turns himself into a chili bean bomb, which is pretty cool. He also has a mounted cannon ability, which is pretty unique, since instead of a turret, he's just launching bombs at you. And finally, we have the Parrot, which is supposed to replace the Zombot drone engineer. It pretty much functions the exact same way. Super Brains, he is the superhero zombie. He does really good melee damage up close, but he also has a hybrid ability as well. If you aim down with him, he has a laser beam, which you can charge and shoot like this, though it doesn't do a lot of damage, and it burns out pretty quickly. His abilities are actually pretty cool. You have this Hadouken Super Ball that just shoots a giant fireball at anybody you please. You have Super Kicks, which allow you to get around the map quick, and Turbo Twister. Yeah, it's just not that good. Imp! So this is another character that has an ability with abilities, which we'll get to in a minute. First up, we got the Impulse Grenade. So he just throws the Impulse Grenade and it pulls plants from a radius and you're able to get underneath them and shoot them, which is pretty cool. He's also equipped with Imp Kata, which basically just makes him harder to shoot as he spins around and shoots in every direction. It's pretty annoying when paired with the aforementioned Impulse Grenade. And finally, his mech. It changes depending on which variant you get, but the main one is really strong. It has a laser minigun, it has these missiles that are just devastating at any range, and it also has a stop ability. And when things get tough and you're about to die, you can self-destruct and just eject. And it does explosive death damage. And finally, Hover Goat. Now I know no one plays him, but I might as well go over the abilities. He has like a weird heal beam, but it's more of a stat buffer. Think like the new Flag Zombie or the Flag Weed. He also has a supercharge ability, which is kind of like a weaker hyper, because he could jump around and hover. And he also has a mobile beam attack, which is just kind of okay. Well, what about the new modes? There are actually a good amount of modes. You have things like Boss Hunts, Cats vs Dinos, which is basically Search and Destroy, Soil Survivors, which is also like Search and Destroy, Graveyard Ops, which is a really fun mode. It's just Garden Ops but for zombies, Herbal Assault, which is gardens and graveyards but with the roles reversed, making for some really fun time. Not to mention the playable lobby, as well as a revamped and updated player versus enemy campaign, and time trials, believe it or not. There's actually a lot more content to do outside of the online multiplayer. It's astounding. Like, seriously, this is really a good sequel, I'm not kidding. The sticker shop system did change a little bit from Garden Warfare 1, where the prices went up, but the coins you earned also went up, so it's not really a big deal. Garden Warfare 1 gave you the sticker stars to basically complete challenges you didn't feel like doing, but in this game, since it's XP based, it's a little bit different, and there's a lot less fluff in what you can get. And there's a lot more cosmetics and stuff, so there's still a reason to go and check it out. I mean, hell, there's so many characters you're gonna get. You're gonna be buying sticker packs for a very, very long time. What about the music for this game? Does it live up to Garden Warfare 1? Yes. They even brought in Kenny Loggins for whatever reason. Not like I'm complaining, but it's a really good mix of music, and it does a really good job of feeling like the game really did flip sides. Garden Warfare really felt like it was more plant and joyful and happy, but this one has a more like spooky kind of like ooh undertone to it, and it does a good job at this because we are in Zomburbia. We're no longer in Suburbia, so the vibe has to change. We also get a really good amount of just bangers here. Instead of having Loon Boon Skirmish and a couple of other songs looped, you now have set music. For example, for Zombopolis, you have a specific song for that. What about the designs? Well, honestly, the characters are pretty much the same. The newcomers are actually really nice. I really like their designs, and I could get used to them. Don't get used to them. And I love that Zomburbia really does feel like it flipped the switch. Suburbia and Zomburbia are very different. You could literally see that on the one map where one side is still Suburbia and the other is Zomburbia. They really did make it feel so much like a zombie suburbs. Like, seriously, it's so good. And finally, the story. If I haven't given too much of it away already. So basically, Suburbia lost and Zomboss took over Suburbia and he named it Zomburbia. So now the zombies live there. But the plants are now attacking instead of the zombies. So it's really zombies versus plants. So who's gonna win this one? We'll never know. We actually will never know. It is basically the same story but with the roles reversed, I'm sorry. But yeah, that's Garden Warfare 2. And I think it's probably the best sequel that Garden Warfare 1 could have got, in all honesty. Just embracing the chaos that Garden Warfare had and translating it to a new game and upgrading it beyond what the first one was. But Plants vs. Zombies would take a short break from the third-person shooter games and go to a very weird kind of game for this series. A card game, no less. Now, let's go check that out. Plants vs. Zombies Heroes is a card game with a very unique twist. It has a very complex system with a ton of classes to pick and choose from and mix and match. There is a lot of variety in the way you could play this game. The main goal of the game is to reduce your opponent's health from 20 to 0. To do that, you need to make a deck of 40 cards and pick a superhero to use with it. For example, maybe you want to make a pea shooter deck. You would be in luck because you can use Green Shadow. Once you have all 40 cards, you get into battle. You start with 4 cards and a random superpower from your hero. And the game goes from there. Each turn, you gain a currency. It's either brain or sun, meaning every turn you get 1 extra. So for example, turn 6, you get 6 sun or 6 brains unless you do ramp, which is a whole nother topic. Now, this game really doesn't have any limits to what you can do. If you could think about it, there's probably a card in the game that does it. For example, you could do splash damage decks, where you're constantly damaging your own units to make your own units stronger. Not to mention heal decks, where you're constantly taking damage, but you're getting healed, and you're really pissing off your opponent. Or one of my favorites, Conjure, where it's up to RNG whether you win or lose. And it's really fun. Even the stupid OP decks like Aggro Solar Flare are really fun to play and play against. The only issue I have with this game is the grind, because grinding is a challenge in the game, but there are budget decks. The Spark system is also pretty cool, and you can use it to get new cards, but you could also buy cards, which is kind of stupid. I wouldn't do that, honestly. Now, gameplay aside, let's talk a little bit about the story, because the story is really fun here. You have Dr. Edgar Zomboss, still very pissed about everything that's happened. He decides to use his Zombot, and he just turns a bunch of plants and zombies into superheroes. And Crazy Dave and Dr. Edgar Zomboss have no problem calling them out of nowhere to come and fight. And it's honestly one of the coolest concepts, and we get a lot of cool characters. I mean, come on. Some of these are just great. Granted, a couple are from Garden Warfare, but I don't really care. It's still nice to see them outside of games in Garden Warfare. I'm just being real here. Plants vs. Zombies has a very different design from pretty much every game we've talked about so far. Pretty much every character looks like it would be straight out of a comic book, which leads to a lot of new designs. For example, look at the pea shooter, look at the sunflower. A lot of the original PVZ plants and zombies look very different from what they're used to looking like. And I think it's really cool, and it really just immerses you in the game. Take a look at the loading screens. You can tell that they just put a lot of time and effort into it. Look at all these comic book covers. They really did their research, and they really wanted to make it feel like a comic book. And it does a really good job, I gotta say. Beautiful, beautiful game. As for the music though, they honestly do capture the comic book feel as well. Each hero has its own distinct music. The music, I would argue, is just as amazing. It is some of the most in-depth stuff, and you probably wouldn't even catch it unless someone told you, which I'm about to do. Remember how I said each character has 2 specific classes that they can pick from? Each of their themes are actually little tidbits from both of the respective classes. Take a look at Spadal, for example. He takes stuff from both the Kabloom class and the Guardian class, and he also adds his own unique type of music, creating his own personal theme. That's why some characters overlap. Like for example, Grass Knuckles, you could hear a little bit of the Guardian in there as well. Another cool feature is that the music actually starts out slow, but then when you get to turns 5, 6, 7, it starts scaling slowly but surely, and it just captures the feeling and the intensity that this game really did bring. And it's amazing, seriously, I'm not even kidding. A lot of the music in this game is just so good, even the sound design. This is just a great game, honestly, and it's a shame that it didn't get the support it deserves because wow, it's such a good game, but it's so hard to get into. It's like the worst thing ever, man. I wish it was easier to get into. Maybe it was all those years ago, because this is an old game. Don't get me wrong, this is a very old game, but it's still just as fun as it was all those years ago. I know it's very hard to get into this game, so I wanted to leave you with a little extra something. There is a mod for this game, and it's very cool. I left it in the description. Go check it out. Go download it if you can. I don't want to spoil anything. Just know that it's a really good time, and you're going to love it if you try it. Trust me.
And that's all I got for Plants vs. Zombies Heroes.
Since the dawn of time, war has raged between the plants and the zombies. You must be...
Yeah, we get it.
Plants vs. Zombies Battle for Neighborville was the third-person shooter based on Plants vs. Zombies, and it wasn't that bad. It wasn't the third Garden Warfare that we all expected, but I feel like it was treated as such. And what do I mean by this? Well, when they announced that variants were not coming back, a lot of people were upset and distraught by this, and rightfully so. I think that single removal of variants really did kill all the momentum for Battle for Neighborville, and it contributed to how well this game was gonna do. Despite being a standalone product, it was the third-person shooter in the Plants vs. Zombies franchise, and I think the best way to look at Battle for Neighborville is a reimagining of how different Garden Warfare could have been. It does a solid job actually representing itself in this way, with a more in-depth upgrade system and even giving old characters new abilities, such as giving pea shooter homing attack. While there were some big changes that brought controversy, like the upgrades, there are some new ideas here that brought in a lot of new mechanics, especially ones that weren't found in Garden Warfare. For example, sprinting. That was a really big addition, and I will admit it was a really cool mechanic to add, but let's go over all the new characters so you can see what I'm talking about. First up, we have Acorn. He's basically a mix between the imp for the plant as well as the space cadet for the plants. He has some pretty strong abilities. He has the sap trap, which is pretty good. He has a dash ability, and of course, he can call in his oak. The other acorns can jump onto your oak and make just like this huge tank thing, and it's really cool. Nightcap is similar to the Plants vs. Zombies Heroes character. While not a direct copy, it does rely on stealth and ninja-like tactics to do good. It also has an amazing ability where you just push the button and you win. Snapdragon, he's like the fire chomper on crack. Well, he doesn't have a chomp or burrow. He does have a firewall ability, which is cool. The ability to shoot a blue homing fireball, and of course a slime ability. The first of many, as you'll come to see. The pea shooter just got a slight rework, so his hyper got reworked. Since sprinting now exists, he now can jump extremely high, and he can hover to the ground, which is actually really cool. Sunflower had her pot ability switched to heal drop, as well as having the ability to overheal teammate. The cactus can just fly now instead of spamming tall nuts, and her drone also just shoots missiles from the mouth instead of calling it in, since, you know, sprinting. They destroyed Chomper. Like, I don't like Chomper, but I do. They ruined it. He has Burrow, and Burrow is still fine, but keep in mind that everybody can sprint now, so it's even harder to get Burrow kills. Chomper Spikeweed is now hurled, which is way worse, because more often than not when you drop a Spikeweed, you want it right in front of you. They fixed his goop, so it's now like a stink cloud kind of thing, and I just don't know. Honestly, I don't know how you could have fixed Chomper in this meta. I don't know. You would probably have to make Burrow like double the time, maybe faster. I honestly have no idea. They basically just nerfed Corn. They just gave him a beacon. It's kind of sad if I'm being honest. But I mean, I like the Butter Strike. I like the Butter Strike more. Why? So Rose, she no longer has a time snare. Now she has Jinx as an ability instead of a variant. Very cool. Thank you. Citron also gets a new beam ability. Foot Soldier and All-Star are pretty much the same actually, except for the All-Star's dummy shield, which is now better because it makes like a little barrier thing. So they just made my boy better. I'm not complaining. Scientist is now given items a healer actually needs, giving him sticky healy thingies over sticky explosive thingies. He can also overheal zombies now, and no more heal station. Engineer got worse if it wasn't bad enough. Still no drone, but now he has this boost pad thingy, which is really bad. The megaphone got a nice upgrade, so yeah, you could counter chompers even better. Deadbeard lost his cannon and now has a grappling hook anchor, and the bird he uses poops out bombs like Matilda from Angry Birds, which is pretty cool. The Imp's gravity nade now works differently, with the pull effect instead of just lifting them up into the air, and they really did nerf Imp Kata. Like seriously, like they did. Super Brains, he doesn't use kicks anymore, he just has this like slam ability, just like the Cadet and the Snapdragon. 80 Zombie, he's really cool. I really like 80 Zombie. He has a charged bow and arrow, which is pretty cool, I gotta say. And he also has a lot of things that deal with explosives. He has a dynamite dodge. He can hop on a rocket and just spew missiles out, and can't missile, which is probably the best of his abilities. It's pretty cool. Electric Slide is a really nice addition. She has electricity. Kind of like Electric Boogaloo, but not quite. She has a way to fling plants away from her, the Scientist's energy warp, and she can summon tornadoes like the Wizard Monkey from Bloons. Space Cadet is a cool addition to the zombies, acting as a way for zombies to team up. They have access to the Big Bang Beam, basically a semi-mobile Sunflower/Gatling Pea hybrid, and you also have the Smash ability, which is pretty solid. And of course, the Space Cadets combine and create a huge space station, which destroys pretty much everything.
We also have the Wizard Zombie, which is a pretty cool concept. He has this potion, which when splashed down on himself gives him a short frame of invincibility, while when throwing it at other plants, it makes them slower. He also has this kind of mounted turret ability, where he just puts himself on top of a random zombie and it's like a bonus turret. He also has the Staff Slam ability, where he just creates explosions in a radius. And two characters I figured I'd mention together are the Wildflower and TV Head Zombie, which are both kind of the same. They both have a remote detonated character that they could spawn in, kind of like the drones. They both also have an explosive throwable that knocks plants or zombies back, and they also have a settable respawn point. So they're pretty much the same.
Well, besides characters, the gameplay was a lot different. It built off of what the first Garden Warfare started, sporting a huge open world lobby, which is really awesome. And of course, you have Giddy Park, which is really awesome. Not to mention the updated Soil Survivors mode, which is pretty cool in the Thunderdome. And for the most part, all of the modes pretty much remain the same.
Since there was a change to the way characters function and how they upgrade, there was also a change to the sticker system. So instead of getting pretty much anything from the shop, you now just get cosmetics. Most of the cool stuff is relegated to costumes and the battle pass system, which is just okay.
But enough about the gameplay, what about the music and design? I actually really like a lot of the tracks in Battle for Neighborville. As I was gathering music for this video, there was just so many good songs. There were some really good songs besides the trailer song that they made, and that song was just so good, I can't even lie. If anything, the music is criminally underrated. Now for the designs, honestly, this game has some controversial designs for me at least. While I personally dislike a few of these designs, I do like others, and they all work on some degree. So if this is the low point for PVZ designs, we're so spoiled. The story, in fact, is pretty much the same, but also with a new twist. It's now just a stalemate of epic proportions. Zombies and plants have turned everything into World War III, and which side will gain the upper hand this time? Well, I guess we'll never know. Despite all the changes and controversy, I think this game got dunked on just a little too much. There's a reason that there's 3 third-person Plants vs. Zombies shooters. On the one hand, I would have loved Garden Warfare 3, but on the other hand, this is okay. If anything, Battle for Neighborville was an attempt to kind of revitalize and revamp Garden Warfare. If anything, honestly, this game is fine. It's not the worst thing in the world. It's a decent third-person shooter. And will I play it more than the other Garden Warfare games? No, not even close. I would much rather play 1 and 2, but Battle for Neighborville's fun for variety. It's good to have different variety, you know? I don't know, this game's aight. We have reached modern day once again, as this is it, Plants vs. Zombies 3. Though, it didn't always look like this. In fact, it once looked like this. A vertical, modern mobile game with some of the PVZ charm, sure, but it was greatly overshadowed by a lot of questionable game decisions. It had a ton of ways to pay to win, and it was definitely controversial. Then, the devs took all of the criticism together and came out with what we have in front of us today. A tower defense game reminiscent of the first game. We finally got it. We got a tower defense Plants vs. Zombies game after quite a while, I gotta say. I'm gonna be honest, I actually enjoyed it. It is very similar to 1 and 2, but different in its own ways. The sun economy has once again been sent into ruin, with sun drops now being worth only 1, and plants being worth 1, 2, 3 sun, etc. The lawnmower system is actually kind of cool now, with one lawnmower robot thing which follows the closest zombie, which is pretty cool. There's also a charge meter which has abilities that you can use during the game for devastating damage. There's also the return of abilities you can purchase beforehand, such as the rake. They did also include some very weird things as well, including a live system, not to mention the level system, which is kinda linear and pretty boring. Nothing too memorable about level 6, you know? It feels like with the PVZ 1 and 2 system, you kinda had an idea of what was coming up. For example, 4-10 was a boss fight just like 3-10 and 2-10. With this system, it just feels like you're just getting levels tossed at you. You also get to build up your city, which is actually kinda cool. It's pointless, but hey, here's to hoping it gets better. The music is a lot different than the first two tower defense games, and more so the shooter games as well, as the two composers for Plants vs. Zombies are not a part of this game at the moment. I just don't think it stands as tall as some of the other games in the series, especially with the tower defense games. I would love for them to prove me wrong, but as it stands, Vasebreaker is the best theme so far. Besides the music situation, what about the designs? Which is arguably one of the most controversial things about this game. I actually really loved the designs over the previous Plants vs. Zombies 3, and to some extent, more than some of the designs in Plants vs. Zombies 2. I really loved the designs for things like the pea shooter and the sunflower, as well as how they treated the zombies. They gave them a little bit more charm. They did a good job preserving the lifelessness of the zombies. The animations of the pea shooter and the sunflower are a lot more expressive than they were in Plants vs. Zombies 1 and 2. I will say this, however, Crazy Dave looks really off. Like, I don't know what they did to him. It just looks off. But the characters like Patrice and a couple of the other characters are actually pretty decent in this style. It's a very cartoonish style, and I think the series about fighting off zombies with plants should strive for that kind of cartoonish style. And that leaves me with the last category, the story. So the story is decent, I guess? It's interesting, to say the least. We meet Crazy Dave and Patrice, who apparently Dave raised as a child. We get Crazy Dave lore. Kinda cool. A little bit more about the girl. She's one of the protagonists from the comic book series, which I actually own a few of. I don't know what they did with Nate. Nate is nowhere to be seen. So we also get introduced to some new faces from Neighborville as you try to make a zombie survival camp thing. And I mean, it's not a bad story, it's just a very new direction. Honestly, this whole game is just so weird. It's gone through so many twists and turns and changes, and I just don't know how they're gonna tie it all together when it's all said and done. While this version of PVZ 3 was way better received than the first one, I really do believe that if they want to make something good, they should do what they did over a decade ago and be better than the competition. Don't fall into the money-hungry ways of other mobile games of this time. We seriously could have such a great game here, but there's a few things I'd change. 1. Expand on the building mechanic. As is, it just feels very cosmetic. Maybe some parts give you slight buffs. For example, maybe an antenna can spawn you in with a free sunflower or extra sun. Just a quick idea. I stole it from Bloons. 2. Improve level design. I'm sure this will change with time as it did for a short time in Plants vs. Zombies 2, and I do think it's growing pains, but I really do think this game could expand on some of its new locations, introduce a couple new gimmicks, and really spice up the gameplay. As it stands, all the levels are just a bit too short. That's seriously all they have to do to make a good Plants vs. Zombies game. This game will more than likely determine where PVZ goes from here, but for now, that's where we are. Plants vs. Zombies has definitely had its highs and lows, and I still do think it will forever stay a timeless classic because of the sheer power of their high points. This franchise has arguably one of the best tower defense games and one of the best shooter games, not to mention a stellar, star-studded soundtrack for nearly every game in the franchise, and lovable and memorable designs and a simple yet engaging story. I love this franchise a lot, but I've been seeing a lot of interesting content on YouTube relating to Plants vs. Zombies, and more recently, a lot of it has been negative, talking about how the franchise is dead or how it's been killed. And while I will admit the zombies are dead and this game isn't nearly as big as it used to be, this franchise is nowhere near as dead as people make it out to be. I believe that one of the reasons this franchise is still around is the community. It might not be as big as it once was, but make no mistake, there are still people out there playing a nearly decade-old game. Even if, God forbid, the next couple Plants vs. Zombies games to come out are just horrible, it will still be remembered as a timeless classic, and I'm all for it. I hope you enjoyed my love letter to Plants vs. Zombies Horde. Take care. Brains. Oh, it's over. Ugh.